liftoff.
Here we go. It's game time. Unforgettable.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Welcome to Sports and More, where almost anything goes. Coming to you from the marsh just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, here's your host, Dean Millard.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Nice to be in orbit.
I mean, I have a hard time believing anyone's going to beat the Lakers or Clippers. The Nuggets are really good. I think it all depends on kind of health, right? Especially in the West. And if the Lakers are healthy, if the Clippers are healthy, I can't see a situation where, it's not one of those two teams. But and I think the Clippers are interesting too because they've had a lot of ups and downs, right? Like they've had a weird season in that they lose to teams that they should probably beat. I don't know, there's nights where, they got, I don't know if they're infighting, I don't know if that's the right word, but, guys have called each other out already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Montrezl Harrell has come out and talked about some of his teammates, and I don't think, they appreciate the special treatment Paul George and Kawhi get, I guess. But when you look at that roster, that's a roster built for the playoffs. Like, they are deep.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 35 of Sports and More, the podcast. Welcome to Podcast Alley. My name is Dean Millard. Thank you very much for downloading this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you are listening. I'm just glad you are. And that was the voice of Nabil Karim of ESPN. And really looking forward to hearing that conversation, or bringing you that conversation rather, because we talked a lot about the NBA, and we talked about the All-Star game that just happened. We discussed Kobe Bryant, and it's interesting. Nabil was part of the Humboldt bus crash tragedy as a part of TSN. He was on the air that night, as was I on TSN 1260. So we discussed that and how just the, obviously not in the iconic stature of Kobe Bryant, but still human tragedy, and how you cover those things on the air. We, if you listen to this episode with Ryan Rashog from a few months back, him and I discussed that. But we also chatted about Connor McDavid's image popularity, if you will, in the United States. So it's a great conversation, and Nabil has a cool career path as well. I always love diving into the background and things like that of our guests, and finding out their path to where they are. And he has a very cool one, as a lot of people do. So we'll bring you the conversation with Nabil Karim of ESPN, formerly of TSN, and we will also bring you our top three topic today, of course, presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Fantasy sports are great. We all love them. And now with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, it's more realistic than ever. Own one of the only 31 professional fantasy hockey franchises in the world, 23-man rosters, a 27-player reserve list to stockpile for the future, daily roster moves, a wickedly unique playoff format, and they're not just players on your roster. No, they are digital assets. You own these players. You can buy them and sell them, use digital currency, build a championship team now, or stockpile for the future. There are a few franchises left of the 31 available. Mine is in the mix, and I'm excited about this. I'm in contention for the playoffs already. So if you would like to get your own, you can bid right now at www.air-sports-NHL-fantasy-franchise-auction. For those of you watching on our YouTube channel, you can see the link right there. You can open up your free account, you can make a bid, and you'll be notified if you are outbid. So you can get your hands on one of these franchises and get in the game. In this format, you own the game, so get in the game. with the ultimate franchise fantasy sports. It's a great concept. And our top 3 topic today is, who are the top 3 NBA contenders coming out of the All-Star break? Who are your top 3 contenders coming out of the All-Star break for the NBA? Ultimate Franchise chipping in saying Raptors, We the North, Fear the Deer, and Clipper Nation. I'm going with a little bit of a different list, and thank you very much to Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports for chiming in on the top 3. We'll get to some others in a bit. I'm going, the honorable mention is the Clippers. You heard that clip from Nabil Karim off the top. Maybe there's something not quite right with the Clippers. I don't know. Can Kawhi do it 2 years in a row? We'll see. That's my honorable mention. I'm not counting them out. I'm going the Raptors, number 3. Lakers, number 2. And I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks, number 1. It's not just an old veteran game anymore. The Greek Freak is maturing. I like what the Bucks are doing. So you can get more details for the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports at www.uffsports.com, and you can chime in on our top 3 by hitting me up on Twitter at Duck Millard. And I want to tell you about Podcast Alley. That is the other shows that we have here hosted at Podcast Alley. Nabil Karim, of course, on this, plus one-timers, which will come out in a couple of days. Jason Greger, previously on Sports and More. Tyler Remchuk and Playing Pepper from last week on the Prospect Show. Jamie Thomas is going to join us Monday coming up of Jets TV and Fantasy Baseball. We've got the evolving details of our Fantasy Baseball League. And John Carl will be joining me on the Cannabis 101 podcast from the Alberta Cannabis Council. That episode will come out tomorrow on Wednesday. Last week's episode with Marcy Kiziak, president of Nova Cannabis and One Hitters, is currently available. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's pretty easy. Sportsandmore.ca is the website. Duck Millard on Twitter. Sports and More Podcast on Instagram. Sports and More 35 on Facebook, and you can email me sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. All right, one more thing to tell you about before we get to our interview with Nabil Karim, and that is that we have an Acme Meat Market trivia contest. A gift card from Acme Meat Market is up for grabs. You can go say hi to Corey, Amanda, and their wonderful staff in the Ritchie Market in Edmonton, 9570 76th Avenue. Check out their website, acmemeatmarket.ca, and know that when you're getting something from Corey the Butcher, which is his Twitter handle, you are getting something from one of the best butchers in the world, recently named to Team Canada for the World Butchers Challenge in September 2020. Your hint is first jobs. Think of that as your hint with Nabil Karim as we get to know him a little bit more with the bio.
Time for the bio.
Nabil Karim was born and raised in Vancouver, BC. He started at Simon Fraser University in criminology, but graduated with a major in communications, then earned a broadcast journalism degree from BCIT. He started his career on a maternity leave replacement in Prince George, BC in 2008. He then traveled east to Winnipeg, working with Fox Sports and Global Television for less than a year. In 2010, he landed in Toronto with CBC as a sports anchor and host of Hockey Night in Canada online. He went national in 2011, joining TSN in Toronto, and spent 8 years on the Sportscenter desk before joining Sportscenter with an ER at ESPN in May of 2019. Nabil, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Sports and More, the podcast. Thanks very much for taking some time with us. How are things right now down in the USA?
Things are good, man. Things are good. As I was kind of telling you offline there, I apologize if I do cough during our podcast here. My son is, he's a walking germ, man. He's a walking germ. He goes to school here and he always is sniffling, always is coughing, and he got me. He got me yesterday. I got the chills, and They woke up 20 minutes before this pod, so let's see how it goes.
Well, I'll take you anyway. I'm just glad to be able to chat with you. And we know you're a big hoops fan, so let's start with the NBA All-Star Game just wrapped up. Obviously, there was a lot of Kobe tributes. Was it just enough, not enough, too much? What did you think of because you knew it was, and you know, David Stern also kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit too. But what do you think about the tributes?
I thought it was appropriate. I mean, I think there's never too much as far as what Kobe Bryant has done. And, you know, it's really interesting because Kobe resonates with people, I think, on so many different levels. And you can say what you want about him as a person. Nobody's perfect, and I don't want to get into that. But, you know, when you talk about how he resonates with people, like for me, I would say growing up playing basketball, he went from high school to the NBA. And I kind of got to watch his journey, which most people got to do, right? Which is really cool. And then you see him transition into being, you know, such a great father after, you know, he's probably a great father during it, but you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. Really spending the time with his kids after and focusing his life on them. And I think what's kind of lost too is some people talk about the chopper. He shouldn't be doing the chopper. Well, if you go back, and Kobe's talked about this for years, the reason he was using the chopper, I think he used it for about 17 years, was because it gave him more time with his kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was able to come home from practice and whatever it was, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then he could go take his kids to school, pick them up, whatever it was. So I think he resonates with people as a player. I think he resonates with people as a father, because we can all, like, I mean, from a family perspective, we can all kind of relate to that. And then for me too, as far as like a motivational standpoint, like the Mamba mentality to me is it's nothing revolutionary, because he talks about like goal setting. He talks about perseverance. You know, mm-hmm. He talks about all these sorts of attributes, which again are not, we talk about these in our daily life. We apply these in our daily life, but he puts them all together, and then seeing him excel at what he did, I think that's really motivating. I can't get enough of, you know, some of the interviews that I might've missed over the years. And Kobe just talking about, and he's kind of been more open, I think, since he's retired. But it almost felt like Kobe, it didn't feel like Kobe's been like gone from the game for a few years. Right. You know what I mean? Like it feels like Kobe's right there. And it's just, I mean, it's still, even when I look at it today, like when we do stuff today, you know, every so often we still have stuff going up on ESPN, and I still kind of shake my head. It's just so jarring to see that, you know, Kobe Bryant's not with us anymore. But I think the NBA did a great job of honoring him. I think they recognized David Stern, which is great. And at the same time, I think with the change of the rules for the fourth quarter and so forth, I wasn't sure about that at first. I was like, okay, it's kind of cool with honoring Kobe, but it ended up being great. It worked out really good. And, you know, I think that was one of the best All-Star games I've seen in a long time.
That's what a lot of people are saying, is that this was the best All-Star game that they can remember. And, you know, Kobe Bryant, I think you're right. It seems not that long ago I was watching that final game of him taking shot after shot. And, you know, as Canadians, we have a kind of a special connection to Kobe because he lit up the Raptors for was it 81? Yeah. So I can just, you know, I imagine what that must have been like on your network, you know, the tributes that you guys must have done, because this is an icon that has obviously gone way too soon.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I was actually in Vancouver at the time when it happened. I was visiting family in Vancouver, so I didn't have access to all the stuff we were doing down there. But I know for a fact, I think we went 5.5 hours live TV on Kobe. It was Zubin Mehenti and Mike Leaves, and couldn't think of two better people to do that. Zubin's incredible breaking news. So is Michael, and Michael has a connection to Kobe. He worked in the LA market for years, working with the Lakers and Clippers. So, you know, it was, I talked to Zubin about it after when I got back. So they went 5.5 hours, and then I think they switched anchors, and they went another, I think, 4.5 hours. So they went almost about, I think, 10 hours on Kobe that day, live coverage. And, you know, I think that's what we do so well here at ESPN, right? You know, we can take a story like that, something where, you know, people are still in disbelief, and kind of give it some kind of context to his life. I mean, some of the people we had on that day, Spike Lee, you know, former players and so forth. It gives again, context to what Kobe meant. And Dan Levitard actually, I think, said it best. He kind of said that Kobe's death reminded him of like this generation's John Lennon, because he's so iconic. He's global. He's past the game. You know what I mean? And yeah, like I think if he had passed away in a different way, I think it'd still be just as tragic, because he's 41 years old. But with the imagery of the way it happened, with the other people on board, the 3 kids, including his, I mean, there's just so many elements to this, which kind of makes you shake your head. But I mean, I talked to Zubin, and just to give you a little bit of background, like today, you got to get it right first, right? And that's the biggest thing, to get the news right. And then at the same time, honor the guy. And we had so many great elements that we've had over the years with Kobe Bryant, because he's given us so many memories, right? Like, show the 81 highlights, you can show the tributes that we had for him on his last game. And I still remember, people would ask me, "Oh, do you remember about the 81? Where were you when it was 81?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." But like, I kind of go back to the game you referenced, the 60 is his last game, because I was doing Sportscenter that night, and I remember that. I think some people forget that's the night the Warriors were going for their 73rd win, right?
Right.
And I can't remember who the Warriors were playing that night, but I think it was like a team that they were expected to beat. So that was the story all season. Kobe was one of the stories, but that was, I think, the story, right? Because nobody thought they would break 72-10 and Jordan's record, the Bulls record. And I still remember after the first quarter, I'm telling my producer, "Hey, man, like, we should watch Kobe here. Like, you look at he's like really going for it. He's not passing up anything. We'll see. Like, no, the lead's going to be the Warriors. Fine." Sure. Halftime, you're like, "Okay, he's put up this many points, man. Like, he's, I'm like, okay, fine, whatever." And then when he got to the third quarter, when he started to get real serious, and then in that fourth, the lead changed. So imagine that. Like, we led with Kobe Bryant that night over a 73-9 win team, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And I'm almost 100% sure ESPN would have done the same. They would have led with Kobe Bryant. I wasn't there at the time, but I put a lot of money on ESPN leading with Kobe Bryant. So I understand why, and I understand the magnitude of the tributes that are coming in. And I think they're going to continue to come in, because people are still dealing with this and still coming to terms with the fact that he's him, his daughter, and those other 7 people are not with us.
It's not in the same light when it comes to celebrity, but the tragedy is the same. And I look back to what happened with the Humboldt Broncos, and I guess I thought TSN did such a masterful job of the entire coverage, from Ryan Rashog being there for so long, and I've talked to Ryan about what that was like covering that tragedy. But on the scale of how it gripped the country, it's the same. It's not the same as a celebrity status or iconic status, but the way it gripped the country, it's kind of similar, I'd imagine.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I was actually working Sportscenter that night too, by chance. And one of our coordinating producers came over and said, "Hey, like, we got word that this happened, and there's like a lot of kids on board, and it doesn't sound like they've made it." So we waited. It was me and Kelsey Braid that day, and I think we went on for about an hour live, something like that, maybe an hour and a half live, before we switched it over. And I'm not gonna lie, I was super emotional, man. That was a tough one for me. Again, having no connection to these kids, but having my own son, just thinking about this stuff. And that's again another thing with Kobe too, kind of just relating it back to both of these stories that you're talking about, Humboldt and Kobe. Like, Kobe was taking his daughter to basketball practice. Yep. You know what I mean? So that could be any of us taking any of our kids to whatever sports or whatever activities that they do. Yeah, maybe not in a chopper in a car, but car accidents happen every day, So with the Humboldt situation was just, tragic. And I remember just being on air and emotional, man. I couldn't hide it. I was definitely, it was in my voice, and big lump in your throat, and you're trying to, be as professional as you can. But Ryan, the job Ryan did, oh my God. He was phenomenal. Our team was phenomenal. We sent Frank Cervalli there too, and a bunch of people overtime. But that was a really difficult story to cover, and kudos to everybody who, I think covered it the right way. Yeah,
that night I was on the air 9 to midnight, and information starts funneling in around 7:30, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to be one of those weird nights where you're trying to bring people the news that you don't have yet. So it was. Right. It was interesting. Okay, I want to go back to the All-Star game, and they used the Elam ending in the fourth quarter, which if people aren't sure of, because I think a lot of people were Googling what it was designed by a college professor who was frustrated by the lack of excitement in the fourth quarter, from what I've read. A predetermined score that the teams played to, and I think they, tribute to Kobe Bryant yesterday. What kind of traction is this getting? Like, I've actually read some articles where people are saying, should the NBA use this in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, I don't think the NBA would go that radical.
No,
I think that would change. That would change too many aspects of the game. It would change a lot of the history of the game. When you talk about finishes and stats and everything, I think that would just be a little bit too much. But I think for the All-Star game, you could throw that permanently in there. Like that was fantastic. And I think this year again was special because it's Kobe's night. You know what I mean? And so I think the guys went extra hard. Brought that Mamba mentality. You want to throw that out there, and they did it for Kobe. But if they could continue to have All-Star games like that, I mean, people are going to start tuning in again and really tuning in to a game like that, where I think All-Star games right now are getting bad raps around sports. And for most people, Saturday night is probably the more exciting night for the NBA with the dunk contest and all that sort of stuff. But I liked it. At first, I was like, I don't know, man. I didn't know about going into it. And then when I saw the way the players were playing, I was like, you can sign me up for this every single year, because it was fun. I thought it was really good. But as far as implementing that in the game, I probably wouldn't. Wouldn't be a fan of that. I
don't think you can mess with history and records and all that. The Toronto Raptors are champions, and we know how they're viewed in Canada. Everybody, 30 plus million people behind them last year. How are they viewed by American sports fans? What's your sense when you got to ESPN about the Raptors' reputation? There's still a lot of people that say, yeah, but the Golden Warriors were hurt and that's why they won. But what's the Raptors' reputation like down in the United States?
I think like when I got here and they were on that run, I don't think a lot of people were jumping on the bandwagon that they're going to win the championship. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, how many people in Canada really thought they were going to win the championship? Let's be real.
You're right.
Like, I mean, we're starting to forget, and our memory's starting to get a little fogged, I think, in Canada, where it's like, I remember doing Sportscenter when Kawhi Leonard came to the Raptors. And at that time, people were upset about DeMar DeRozan being traded, right? Because they were, and I understand that, totally understand that. DeMar's an incredible guy. And he was incredible for the franchise. And there wasn't many people in this franchise's history that actually wanted to be a Raptor. And I totally get it. But I remember even saying, like, and I might not pat myself on the back here, but I remember, like, people are forgetting how good Kawhi Leonard. He never had a Kawhi Leonard in Toronto before. And he'd only played, I think, 9 games a year before. And again, he's not a flashy guy. He's not all over billboards and so forth. Like, he's not LeBron James in that sense. But Kawhi Leonard's unbelievable. And then the narrative changes, like, if he can get us, to the conference finals, that would be whatever. He can leave then. He can leave after this conference final. Then it kind of changed to, he gets to the NBA finals, man, we're happy enough, and he can leave. So I don't know, man. It kind of irks me a little bit that people are like, the States, they hate the Raptors, and I'm not defending it. I just I've seen the narrative change so much because we got selfish, right? We saw how good Kawhi is, and we got selfish, right? As we should, and we should want to keep Kawhi for sure. I mean, I understand why people were hurt, but at the same time, he never also once committed to this team. So as far as long term, right? So when I did get there, I think there were a lot of skeptics as far as how far they can go. Everyone knew they were a really, really good team, but as far as beating the Bucks, I don't think a lot of people picked them to beat the Bucks. And when they got the Warriors, I don't think, even with the injury situation that was kind of lingering around Golden State, I don't think a lot of people picked them. But how many people picked them in Toronto? How many people picked them? Seriously, how many people picked them in Canada? If you're being realistic with yourself, right? So
I didn't think they'd beat the Golden State Warriors. I didn't think they'd win it.
Dude, and I don't think you're alone. I was iffy. In my heart, I'm like, I want them to win. I kept saying it over there. I kept saying it over here, I should say. It's cool because ESPN is like, hey man, if you're a Raptors fan, you can be a Raptors fan on TV. Like, you don't have to hide it. And
interesting.
So, which is great. That's a massive change from Canada, I'll tell you that. And so, I was able to say, man, like, I think the Raps are gonna win. And but is that a smart decision? I don't know. That's just me being a Raptors fan, right? But I think if people could go back and we look at, some of the predictions, and it's hard to go back now because they're champions and everyone's going to say they thought, the Raptors were going to win. But at the same time, I think, yes, you're correct with a lot of people didn't think that they were going to win. They did win. And if Kevin Durant was even there, who knows? I mean, I still think they're going to win, to be honest. And if Clay doesn't get hurt, I still think they would have won. I think they were good enough. But who knows? It's hard to tell, right? Uh-huh. But that doesn't mean there's like an asterisk around it. Like I was talking to Kevin Nagandi here, and he's a big Philly fan. And so we bet on that game 7 with Philly and Toronto. And, we were talking about it after when the Raptors won. He's like, dude, enjoy this, man. He's like, enjoy this. Don't let anyone ever tell you there's an asterisk around the Raptors championship. There's not. They beat who was in front of them, and they were the better team. And so I think this year, I know earlier in the year when ESPN didn't have the Raptors in the top 10 rankings, I think it was like the top 10 poll or something like that. People went in and said, oh my God, my Twitter got just as if I made the rankings myself. They talk to your bosses, who do you work for, you trade. I'm like, what? Like, what? Yeah. Why does this bug you so much? And and the funny thing to me is I agree. I agree they should have been in there 100%. At that time, they had a really good record too, just like they do now. But don't forget, just because Kawhi left, we're still the champs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, enjoy this year. We're still the champs. Until somebody beats the Raptors, we're still the champs. And the fact that they've been able to pull out what they've done, I think they're getting a lot more respect. I think there's been a couple analysts that we've had recently who have said, listen, man, don't sleep on the Raptors. Don't sleep on the Raptors. And so they are getting more and more respect. If they can continue to play the way they are before they were during the break, I mean, they're not going to keep winning 15 in a row, but if they can continue to play well, you never know. You never know. They have that experience, which is something they didn't have before, right? So, I'm not sleeping on them.
There shouldn't be an asterisk around this team. They didn't have Oscar the Grouch banging garbage can lids. They're not the Houston Astros, who do deserve an asterisk. I mean, the Raptors beat the team that was in front of them.
Totally, absolutely, and it's just one of those things where I don't know. I know they're not getting maybe the respect that they should from other people who don't believe that they're the best team. They were the best team, in the world at that time. But at the end of the day, who cares? They're the champs, man. The record book says they're the champs. They were the best team. They had the best player. Kawhi was unbelievable, and so. And it wasn't just Kawhi, right? Like Pascal, in a way, Kawhi leaving has allowed Pascal to blossom.
Totally.
Look at the guy he is right now. I mean, he wouldn't be getting as many touches. He wouldn't be, who knows if he'd be an all-star.
Yeah.
Maybe, at the trajectory he's going at. But, he's been able to grow as a player too, getting more touches, being the guy. And that bodes well for the Raptors in the future too. Would I love to still have Kawhi? 100%. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you look forward to what this team has done and what Masai and Bobby Webster have done as far as bringing up new guy Terrence Davis. Come on, they just seem to find all these gems and bring them up. And I'm excited for the playoffs. And I think it's great that people are not putting pressure on them. Let them go out, let them do their thing. And let people doubt them again, because they doubted them last year. Look what happened.
Yeah, it seems to be Milwaukee, Toronto, and Boston pulling away in the East. But do you see a whole lot more teams in contention out west that can win, or is that just the Lakers or some of the other teams waiting for the playoffs to pull away?
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing anyone's going to beat the Lakers or Clippers. The Nuggets are really good. I think it all depends on kind of health, right? Especially in the West. And if the Lakers are healthy, if the Clippers are healthy, I can't see a situation where, it's not one of those two teams. But, and I think the Clippers are interesting too, because they've had a lot of ups and downs, right? Like they've had a weird season in that they lose to teams that they should probably beat. I know there's nights where, they got, I don't know if infighting, I don't know if that's the right word, but, guys have called each other out already, right? Mm-hmm. Montrezl Harrell has come out and talked about some of his teammates, and I don't think, they appreciate the special treatment Paul George and Kawhi get, I guess. But when you look at that roster, that's a roster built for the playoffs. Like, they are deep. They are so deep. And so I'm interested to see what the Clippers are able to do and what the Lakers are able to do just with LeBron and AD. And I know they're not as deep, but LeBron and AD, it's a pretty special 1-2. I think that's the best 1-2 in the league. So I would have to go with one of those LA teams coming out of the West and East. Don't sleep on Miami either. Miami's a team in the East that could make some noise, and they got a solid squad there, which that works hard and kind of has that Miami identity. Remember those Miami teams back in the day with Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, and those. I think they got that Miami identity. Bam Adebayo is just a freak in the middle there. He's a phenomenal player. Was just going to become a huge star, and Jimmy Butler, and they got some players there.
Where is Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers on the American sports popularity chart, do you think?
It's a good question. Like, I do a show here on ESPN Plus called In the Crease. And it's hard for me to kind of get a gauge of where he is. I would think he's one of the more popular players. And then I just saw a tweet from NBC, the NHL and NBC. I think it was January 31st of this year. And they had the top selling jerseys so far this year. And again, that's not a great indicator, but it's some kind of indicator, right, of popularity, I would think. Because not everybody buys jerseys. But anyways, Connor McDavid's at 4th on that list, which I thought was shocking to me. Sidney Crosby's 1, which is not shocking. Vladdy Tarasenko is 2, which was shocking.
Weird.
Ovi's 3, not shocking. And McDavid 4. I mean, if you're the NHL, this guy has to be the face of your league. He is the LeBron of your league.
Yeah.
He's just, I don't know if you agree, but I think he's head and shoulders better than everybody else.
Yes.
And so you want him to be, or you'd want him to be the face of your league in the States, and you'd want him to be exposed as much as you can have him exposed, in a market where you're trying to grow the game. Because I don't know, I tell my producer all the time, like, within our circle in the Crease, everyone loves hockey, so it's different. But, within even like around ESPN, there's not everybody who loves hockey. And I was just saying, man, listen, watch Connor McDavid play. You watch Connor McDavid play, you're going to fall in love with the game because this guy's, it's exciting. You don't have to love hockey to watch Connor McDavid. So I don't know. I don't know where his level of popularity is and where I don't think he's the biggest star in the game here. That's just my feeling, just because I don't think I see him enough. Like, I don't see him enough on those primetime games, to be honest.
And that's the thing. I've said that for a long time. When the preseason schedule or the season schedule comes out, and you see, okay, how many times are these teams on the game of the week for NBC or whatever it is? This is the thing is, American fans probably will, maybe the casual fan might not know everything about Connor McDavid, but they've probably heard of the Oilers because of Wayne Gretzky. And now you have another generational best player in the game on the Oilers. It shouldn't be that hard of a sell for the network to get this guy on the air more. I
agree. It sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, it sounds really simple. Like, let's expose this guy. Expose is not the right word. Let's put him out there as much as possible so people can see the product with Connor McDavid on it. And you have Leon Draisaitl there too. So it's not like you just have McDavid and a bunch of scrubs or something like that. Like, that's a good team. And you got Leon Draisaitl, one of the best players in the league, right beside him, right? So I don't know why they don't have him more often. Like, should he not be playing on every Wednesday night hockey? I don't think so, or close to it. I know buildings and arenas and all this sort of stuff, they have all these different schedules, and it's difficult. I'm assuming it's incredibly hard to make an NHL schedule or any kind of sports league schedule. But at the same time, they got to figure that out, because if he's not like the number one face of hockey in the United States, that's a problem. I know he's not American, but at the same time, he's by far the best player in the NHL, I would think.
Yeah, LeBron James plays on Christmas. Connor McDavid should play in every outdoor game at least once a year.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you.
No, you're 100% right.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree on that, and you can go and tell all the American sports fans that they should watch Connor McDavid a lot more, and hopefully it does, because that's exactly what's going to help the great. You're right, he is the LeBron. Now, I want to ask you, you've worked on the same show spelled differently, SportsCenter RE, SportsCenter ER. Biggest difference between anchoring SportsCenter on TSN and SportsCenter on ESPN?
Like the resources are much different. I mean, ESPN's huge. As far as like just, we work on a thing called the campus here. I believe it's like 4,500 employees. It's just here in Bristol, yeah. And so, and just for like, it took me like the first 3 weeks I was here, they're like, we're not going to put you on air. We're just going to let you learn about our resources and what is available to you. And I thought that was great because it really eased me in. You know, like we have multiple researchers per show. We have there's just so much support. There's so many different things that we have at our hands that we can use to make our product better and to also provide knowledge and insight for the fans. So I think that was one of the big things, of just realizing how many resources we have here. The scale is different, right? It is. TSN's an amazing product, and I was so blessed to be there. And you know, I met some of my colleagues that I was working with there. But at the same time, this is a brand new challenge. It really is, and it's the best decision I've ever made in my life to come here. And I can't even believe it. I mean, I'm looking at May 1st will be 1 year here, which is just blows my mind that I've been here this long. But it's been such a wild ride. But I guess, again, coming here from TSN, I think just the scope of everything here is just so much bigger.
Well, you know, every time I travel out of Canada, even going to like Mexico or the Dominican, you get ESPN. So I get really excited that I get to watch it because it is on a different scale. It's what you hear about. I hope someday there's a commercial with you arguing about how to spell SportsCenter. I think that would be hilarious because those ESPN commercials are legendary.
That's right. You know, and they just shot a whole new set of them as I got here. And so that's actually, I'm going to pitch that actually.
Yeah.
I think that's really good because, you know, what's funny is I think some people don't realize here is that we don't get the American version of SportsCenter there.
Right.
So we have our own SportsCenter, which is what I was doing, in which we have, you know, incredible talent doing over there. But I think it's a lot of people are just under the impression that we get, you know, Scott Van Pelt over there and we got Stu Scott and all the iconic names over the past, right? Well, we didn't get them. Like, we know who they are.
That's right.
But we didn't grow up with them. And so what was kind of funny was, you know, I've done a few other podcasts, and I did one this weekend in Atlanta, and the guy was just like, hey, man, like, you must have been so nervous or something when you met Scott Van Pelt, you know, being such a legend. And I was like, I'll be honest, like, I've never seen a sportsman with Scott Van Pelt. And I know of his status. I know he's iconic. Right. I watch him while I'm here, and he's incredible. But, like, it was almost a blessing in disguise, I think, that I haven't grown up with all these talent, because in a way you kind of just come in and you're a lot more comfortable, and you don't have to worry about, oh my God, today I'm working with so-and-so, you know what I mean? It's just kind of, it's interesting, but the fact that we don't get SportsCenter, the American version over there, I think is lost on a lot of people here.
It is so true. Okay. I want to go back to, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't get into broadcasting right away. Did you go into criminology in the beginning at university? Yeah,
I did. I was doing I was at Simon Fraser University, and I was doing criminology. I had a minor in communication, which has nothing to do with broadcasting. It's just because I was lazy, and that seemed like an easy thing to do. And I did that for about 2.5 years. My sister was going into criminal law, so I think she had just went to law school in Windsor. So I was kind of following her path, and it's kind of easy because she was, you know, setting me up with courses, and like, I could get some of her old work, and you know, like, so it was kind of. It's set up real nice, to be honest. But I actually enjoyed it. Like, I actually found criminology really interesting. It was just, I would say 2.5 years in, roughly. I felt empty, and I was like, I really wanted to do the sports thing. And, you know, just kind of a background, you know, when I was in high school, I'd watched Sports Page, which is out in Vancouver. They don't no longer exist, but had a ton of talent, you know, around the country. And Don Taylor was my favorite sports broadcaster. And I used to be like, man, I could be that guy. Like, I'd love to be that guy. He's having so much fun. And, you know, I kind of put that dream on the back burner once I left high school because it just seemed unrealistic at the time. And it wasn't until, second year, roughly in the middle of second year, where I was kind of like, okay, I got to try this thing. So I finished university, but what I did was I started calling different people in the industry, doing these like informational interviews, and I just found, I just like tried to build a path basically of like how can I get to where you guys are today? You know, I talked to people who are on network TV in Vancouver, Toronto, and you know, a couple other places in Canada, and kind of built a path. And then I approached my parents about changing, you know, my career path, which didn't go over so well at first, but no, I finished my degree at Simon Fraser. I actually finished with a major in communication and a minor in criminology, and then kind of give myself a 5-year plan. And I said, if after 5 years I'm not in a major market, I'll go to law school, because I had that degree behind me and I could do that.
It's interesting. I had Darren Drager on this, and he said, you know, he worked in my hometown. I'm from Brandon, Manitoba, and he was in Brandon, and he said, I'm going to start taking the real estate courses because this broadcasting thing isn't going anywhere. And I think we all get to that point at some point in our careers. I remember being in Regina thinking, I'm done. I'm not going anywhere. And then I ended up in Edmonton, and I got really happy. And obviously Drags is where he is, and you are where you are. Did you have a thing in your wallet that reminded you about that? Did I read that correctly?
Yeah. So that 5-year plan I gave myself, I wrote it down, and it was like 5 different goals. And the 5th, I can't remember the first 4 were, to be honest, anymore. But like the 5th one was that being in a major market by the time I was, you know, 5 years
Mm-hmm.
was done. And it was Vancouver. For me, major market was Vancouver, Toronto.
Sure.
And so I used to keep that in my wallet, which sounds super corny, right? Especially for like young people today, which like they would never do that, right? And there were times like I had times like what you know you and Drex are talking about, where I was working in Prince George, my first job, and you know you work your ass off, and it was a great experience. But there were days where you know you felt you were down on yourself, right? There were really tough days because you're learning on the job. There's a lot of demand in your first job because you're doing multiple things. Then I went to Winnipeg and I got this job, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, and I wasn't getting the reps that I needed, and I was down on myself, man. I was just like, I don't know if I can do this, but then at the same time, I kind of look at that paper, and you know, it was my motivation to like continue to go because I'd sacrificed a lot at that point too, right? Like you move away from your family, you move away from your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I had gone to broadcast school after university. So it's a time and so I continued. I think networking was the biggest thing for me, honestly. Just I kept continuing to send out my demo tapes all the time. I used to go in, when I was working at Global Fox kind of in Winnipeg, I used to go in after, the show was done, I think at midnight. Their 11 was done at midnight. I used to go in when nobody was around, and I used to go cut new demo tapes all the time. I used to do it 3 or 4 times a month. Because at that time you couldn't use your Mac or whatever. You would have to cut like those beta tapes. Remember that?
Yeah, VHS beta.
People don't know it's like a clunky machine.
Yeah,
it's like this clunky machine where you have to use their machine to cut it. And I'd sit there for like 2 hours cutting the demo tape, and I would just cut it. And then I would send it to different news directors around the country, and not ask them for a job, but just basically say, hey, listen, I'm so-and-so, I work here. Can I get some feedback on my work? And you know, it worked out because I think every job I've gotten so far has been through networking. It's never really been through an ad or like a job listing. It's always kind of been through networking. And the first 2 were through job listings, but I networked to kind of get those jobs. So they kind of knew me ahead of time. But for the last 2, it's just like I've been networking and talking to people. And I think that's a really important thing for people coming up in the industry. And I guess in any industry, really, right? Like networking is really important, and doing it the right way, and not always being the one asking for something, you know, keeping in touch with people, but not always asking them for something. I think it's an important balance of relationship when you can do that.
Yeah, you're not always looking like you're reaching out for something or you want a favor, and it is a good lesson. It's a great lesson in how to communicate and persistence as well. Hey man, this has been so much fun. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope someday we are able to watch ESPN a little bit more, because I'd love to watch you a little bit more. But congratulations on everything that you have going with career and family. Other than the cold, I hope you feel better. Thanks so much, Nabil. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. Let's do it again sometime down the line.
What do you say when your family goes away? Who do you know when you got nowhere to go?
This is the Sports and More podcast with Dean Millard.
Got nothing to drink. How do you smile? You're no longer a child.
That's the sweet sounds of I Got Time from Sweet Bejesus, the official band of Sports and More, the podcast. You can get their debut album, Policeman's Creek, at Apple Music. And big thanks to Nabil Karim. I can't wait to get him back. We might have to do an NBA playoff preview with him or something like that. That was an awesome conversation. So I really appreciate his time. And I want to reward you for listening as well, because we have the Acme Meat Market trivia question right now. $25 gift card up for grabs from Acme Meat Markets, 9570 76th Avenue in Edmonton. You can check out their website, acmemeatmarket.ca. Question is, where did Nabil Karim start his broadcasting career? Hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard. You can also get in touch with us several other ways. You could email me, sportsandmorepod@gmail.com, sportsandmore35 on Facebook, Instagram Sports and More Podcast, or you can get me at Duck Millard on Twitter, and you can get yourself a gift card from Acme Meat Market. Just tell me, where did Nabil Karim's broadcasting career start, and where was his first job? And finally, let's wrap things up with the ultimate franchise fantasy sports poll question. It is, basically the Myron French question of the day, which we might have to bring back the Myron French intro as the question of the day. But the question is, Connor McDavid has decided to retire. The NHL has put all players in the draft. You have the first overall pick. Who of these four players is your first choice? If your choice is not listed, who would it be? So you've got Nathan MacKinnon, Leon Draisaitl, Austin Matthews, David Pasternak. Draisaitl leading the way with 50%, 232 votes so far. 50% Draisaitl, 45% Nathan MacKinnon. Austin Matthews has 1% of the vote. David Pasternak has 4% of the vote. You could vote at Duck Millard on Twitter. And Jeremy McCain at Draisaitl says, I'm an Oilers fan and I still voted MacKinnon. He is incredible. Maybe this will piss off Draisaitl enough to get us the cup. This is ridiculous. Nathan MacKinnon, Leon can't play without McDavid, which is being proven right now that theory can be crumpled up, lit on fire, and thrown in a lake. Ultimate Franchise replies he seems to be doing okay the last 4 games. Actually, since he has been playing with Nugent Yamamoto, he can play without McDavid. He has proven that. If you watch the game, everybody knows that he can play without McDavid. This one says, this is from the Real Popcan. I picked Leon. Now I'm a little upset that Pasternak didn't get any love. And Steve Brandley, S. Brandley says, Draisaitl, but could also easily be MacKinnon, a center who can dominate in both ends, is the biggest asset a team can have. And then that's Draisaitl too. He's going to get better, and he's big, strong. I'm going with Draisaitl, maybe just because I've watched him. But I look at Leon Draisaitl at times, and I'm like, man, this guy can just bowl you over with his strength, or he can make some of the most deft passes that are out there, backhand, forehand, wherever. So he can be a bull in a china shop, and he can be as delicate as the most soft-handed guys that are out there. So have your say on the ultimate franchise fantasy sports poll question at Duck Millard on Twitter, and get more details at www.uffsports.com. That's going to wrap things up for us. Please, hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe. Let us know what you think of the show by leaving us a review. It's really important. It helps us plan future shows. And if you'd like to be a part of the program as an advertiser, we're always looking for creative ways to give people some promotion. Check it out and hit me up on the email, at sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. That's going to wrap things up from Podcast Alley just outside of Edmonton. Thanks very much to Nabil Karim of ESPN. One-timers with Nabil Karim will come out later on this week. Thanks so much to Nabil Karim. As mentioned, have yourself a great week in sports, everybody. Enjoy whatever you watch, and remember, playtime is over.